I let out a breath, running my fingers through my hair as I tried to calm the storm inside my mind. This wasn't just another case, it was personal. And I hated that I was even considering it. The truth was, I'd built my career from the ground up, meticulously carving out a space for myself where I didn't have to rely on anyone, least of all him. I had kept him out of my life for so long, the bitterness from his abandonment still simmering beneath everything I did. But now, here he was, walking back in, acting like everything could just be swept under the rug, asking me to fight for him like I hadn't spent my entire life resenting him. I knew better than to mix personal emotions with professional duty. As a defense attorney, I had represented people I didn't like, people who had done terrible things. But this was different. This was my father. And despite everything, there was still a part of me that wondered if I owed him something. Maybe not forgiveness, but at least a professional courtesy. But was that too much to ask for, considering what he had put my mom and me through? I stood up, walking to the window and staring out at the busy street below, the hum of life outside in stark contrast to the heaviness I felt inside. The city never stopped moving, but here I was, stuck in this moment, unsure of how to move forward. My phone buzzed on the desk, pulling me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the screen, seeing a message from my best friend, Mia. "Are you okay? You sounded off earlier. Want to talk?" I hesitated before responding. Mia had always been there for me, someone who had seen me through the toughest parts of my life. But this? This was something I wasn't sure I could talk about. Not yet. "I'll call you later." I typed the message quickly and put the phone down. My thoughts returned to my dad, sitting in my office like it was just another day in the life of a businessman. He wasn't the same man who had walked away from our family all those years ago. But he still carried that cold, transactional mindset, expecting me to help him without truly understanding the damage he had caused. I thought about all the times my mom had struggled to keep us afloat, how she had worked double shifts to provide for me, all while keeping a smile on her face. And I thought about the years I had spent without him, making a life without his influence or help. It had been hard, but it had made me strong. But now, I was faced with a choice: help him, like he was asking, or turn him down and make him face the consequences of his actions. Could I really help a man who had never been there for me? Could I separate my feelings from the reality of what was at stake? My career? My peace of mind? My past? I took a deep breath and sat back down at my desk, staring at the legal files in front of me. This was no longer just about a case. This was about deciding who I was going to be, not just as a lawyer, but as a person. For now, I didn't have an answer. That night, I dialed Jessica again, my mentor, my compass, the only voice that had ever truly grounded me when life veered off course. "Jess, he showed up like nothing happened," I said, pacing a groove into my hardwood floor. He looked me dead in the eye and said he needed my help. Not "I'm sorry." Not "I know I failed you." Just, "I need you." Jessica was silent for a moment, then asked the question I knew was coming. "Rachel, you're a damn good lawyer. But are you ready to be one for him? Can you put aside what he did to you?" I stared out at the glowing skyline, the weight of her words pressing into my chest. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I think I'm already in too deep." The next few days were a blur of coffee, late nights, and unraveling a case that felt more like a trap than a defense. The charges were severe: embezzlement, wire fraud, falsified financials, and the paper trail painted my father as the mastermind behind a multi-million-dollar scheme. If a jury saw what I saw on paper, he wouldn't stand a chance. But something didn't sit right. The transactions were too orderly. Too elegant. My father had never been the calculated type. He was impulsive, reckless with money, and far too impatient for a scheme that required precision. That's when I noticed Alan Carter's name cropping up, his business partner, the man always working in the background, the one everyone trusted. Too much, maybe. I dug deeper, and the cracks started to show. Alan's offshore accounts, the shell corporations linked through a maze of LLCs, the curious timing of transfers that coincided with my father's absences from the office. The evidence was circumstantial, but it was enough to rattle me. Late one night, I called Jessica again. My voice was steady, but the gravity of what I was about to say hung between us like a live wire. "Jess, I don't think he did it. I think Alan set him up." She didn't respond right away. Then, with quiet clarity, she said, "If you're right, this goes beyond your father. You're not just defending a man, you're exposing a system. Are you prepared for the fallout?" I leaned back, exhaustion pulling at my spine. "Probably not," I said. "But I can't walk away." The next morning, I called my dad. I told him I'd take the case, with one condition. I was in charge. Full transparency. No lies. No spin. No manipulation. To my surprise, he didn't fight it. "Okay," he said, voice strained. "Your way." Maybe he realized how deep the hole was. Or maybe he knew the only person who might save him was the daughter he walked away from. Either way, the line was drawn. And I was all in. Preparing for that first hearing felt like standing at the edge of a storm. I buried myself in old financial ledgers, tracked down former employees, and tried to weave a narrative that wouldn't paint my father as a fraud. It was exhausting, both professionally and emotionally. Every spreadsheet and every interview felt like walking through a house haunted by our history. Still, I reminded myself again and again, this wasn't personal. It was about doing my job, staying objective, and getting to the truth. Our first prep session in my office was thick with silence and tension. He sat stiffly across from me, arms folded, eyes guarded. But every so often, I'd catch a flicker of something softer in his expression, like he was remembering someone he used to know. I stayed focused, outlining the legal strategy, setting expectations. I was deep into outlining the deposition plan when he interrupted. "You're good at this," he said, the words edged with surprise. "Didn't expect that kind of presence." I paused, unsure whether to be flattered or offended. "This is my job," I said simply, keeping my tone level. "I take it seriously." He gave a slow nod and dropped the topic, the moment slipping past as we dove back into legal logistics. As the case progressed, the puzzle pieces started to fall into place, though not without resistance. Alan Carter, my father's longtime business partner, was cagey on the stand. His answers danced on the line between self-preservation and subtle accusation, and it was clear he was trying to shift as much blame as possible onto my dad while scrubbing his own hands clean. The pressure grew heavier by the day, inside the courtroom and in my chest. One evening, drained and restless, I met up with Jessica. Over the hiss of espresso machines and clatter of mugs, I finally let myself admit it. "Representing him isn't easy," I said, cradling my coffee. "Sometimes I think he's hiding something. Other times, he looks like he's drowning." Jessica gave me a knowing look, her fingers curled around her mug. "That's family for you. They're never just clients. They're reflections. Every conversation pulls up something buried. But you're holding your ground, Rachel. And that matters." Her words echoed in my mind as the trial drew nearer. The case had grown beyond legal strategy. It was about more than clearing his name. It had become my test, to see if I could confront a complicated past, stay true to myself, and carry this case with the integrity I'd fought so hard to build. My dad's eyes flickered with something that looked like regret, but he quickly masked it. "No, I didn't say that," he replied quietly, but there was a hesitation in his voice that I couldn't ignore. "But I know I've made mistakes, many of them. And maybe, in some way, they've caught up with me." I didn't know what to say. The fact that he was being honest with me, in this moment, didn't change the years of hurt I'd carried because of him. But it did something else. It made me question the purpose of all this, the reasons I was still sitting in front of him. "You left us, and you never came back," I said, voice wavering slightly. "Now, after all these years, you're trying to play the good guy? How do you expect me to help you, knowing everything I know about you?" He didn't answer right away, his gaze fixed on the floor. I could see the weight of the past in his expression. I can't change what I did, he said, his voice quieter now. But I can at least try to do something right this time, even if it's just this one thing. I ran a hand over my face, trying to process everything. So, what now? I asked, almost bitterly. Do you expect me to work for you as though none of this matters? Do you expect me to help you out of some misplaced sense of obligation? He shook his head. No. I don't expect anything from you. I don't think I ever had the right to. But if you can find it in yourself to help, even just once, then, maybe that would be my way of trying to fix what I broke. His words hung in the air, and for a second, I considered the weight of them. I couldn't tell whether he was truly remorseful or just desperate. But I had a decision to make, and it was more complicated than I had anticipated. You know, the last time you walked out on us, I promised myself I'd never depend on you again, I said softly, staring down at the papers in front of me. And yet here I am, stuck in a situation where I have to decide whether or not I should help you. He nodded, taking a deep breath. I understand if you can't forgive me, Rachel. But I hope you'll at least give me a chance to prove that I'm trying to make things right. I stared at him, feeling my anger start to dull a little, replaced by something I hadn't expected, exhaustion. Maybe I can help, but not because you're my father. Not because of anything other than the fact that it's my job. And if you can't accept that, then I can't help you. He nodded slowly, as if he had already anticipated my response. I can accept that, he said quietly. I don't deserve anything more. The silence between us stretched again, but this time, it felt different. It wasn't just a wall between us, it was a barrier that had been there for years, one that neither of us could erase, but one that perhaps, for the first time, was beginning to show cracks. I'll take the case, I said, breaking the silence. But make no mistake, I'm doing this because it's my duty, not because I'm trying to fix anything between us. This is just business. He looked at me, his face unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, something that, for the first time in my life, I thought might actually be genuine. Thank you, Rachel, he said quietly, his voice almost unrecognizable from the man he used to be. I won't forget this. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. What he didn't realize, though, was that helping him would be harder than anything I had ever done. It wasn't just about the case, it was about everything we had been through. And it was about facing the ghosts that I had buried deep inside me for so long. My heart thudded in my chest. I locked eyes with Ellen. Are you sure that's what he said? I asked, careful not to sound too eager, too desperate. She nodded slowly, her hands wringing in her lap. I remember it because it sounded calculated. Cold. I didn't think much of it at the time. I assumed it was just office politics. But after everything that's come out, after I saw the records, I realized he meant your father. For a second, no one moved. Even the stenographer stopped writing. I glanced at the opposing counsel, who looked pale, caught entirely off guard. Thank you, Ms. Price, I said, my voice steady. That's all I needed to hear. Back at the office that evening, I closed the door behind me and sank into my chair. My father sat across from me, his face tight with something between relief and disbelief. You heard her, I said, setting my notes on the table. That's our in. That's the crack in Alan's story we needed. My dad exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. Do you believe me now? I didn't answer right away. I stared at him, the lines on his face, the tired eyes, the man who had walked out of my life and now sat across from me asking for trust. I believe you didn't steal from your company, I said finally. But trust? That's going to take longer. He nodded, as if he already knew that. I'll take what I can get. For the first time since taking the case, I felt something shift. This wasn't just about exonerating him anymore. This was about exposing a system that had tried to bury the truth, and maybe, in the process, finding a way to repair something that had been broken for 2 decades. We weren't done. But now, we had a thread. And I planned to pull it until the whole thing unraveled. Her voice barely rose above a whisper, but the effect was seismic. I exchanged a quick, startled look with my co-counsel. "Did you report this when it happened?" I asked gently. Ellen lowered her gaze and shook her head. "No. I didn't think it was my place. But it's haunted me ever since. I wasn't sure if it meant anything, until now." Her statement was more than just powerful, it was a turning point. But it wasn't enough. Not on its own. Without corroborating evidence, Ellen could dismiss her account as mistaken memory or baseless accusation. I thanked Ellen sincerely, assuring her we would follow up. That evening, I sat in the dim light of the office with our IT investigator, who had spent the past few weeks combing through archived digital files and email servers. His eyes were fixed on his laptop screen, the blue glow flickering across his focused expression. "We're close," he said. "I've gone through most of Alan's old email backups. There are still a few encrypted folders I'm decrypting. If he left anything behind, it'll be in here." The anticipation was unbearable. But even as I tried not to get my hopes up, I couldn't help but think, this could be the thread that unravels the whole thing. 2 days later, just when my doubts began to surface, my phone rang. I answered immediately. It was the IT investigator, and his voice carried a rare note of excitement. "Rachel, I found it." My spine straightened. "Found what?" "An email Alan sent to an outside accountant. It's vague, but he's clearly setting your father up to take the fall. He tried to delete it, but the archive caught a backup. The timing lines up exactly with the start of the financial discrepancies." My breath caught. "What does it say?" He read it aloud. "The way things are structured, Michael will take the fall if this goes south. Keep everything tight on your end." He paused. This wasn't carelessness. It was premeditated. A flood of relief surged through me. "That's the proof we've been waiting for. And there's more," he added. I traced the IP address. It came from Alan's office workstation. He won't be able to deny it. I thanked him, barely able to hang up before my hands started trembling. With Ellen's testimony and this email, we finally had the evidence. It wasn't just about clearing my father's name anymore, it was about holding the real culprit accountable. But the job wasn't done yet. The morning of the court hearing arrived with a weight I could feel in my bones. I stepped into the courtroom with my father beside me, his silence more telling than any words. He looked worn down, but behind his anxiety, there was a flicker of something else, hope. I laid the folder on the table, the email, the deposition transcripts, all the proof we'd gathered. Then I closed my eyes for a moment, breathed in deep, and prepared to present the truth. I looked at him, unsure of how to respond. For years, I had kept a wall between us, a wall built from anger, resentment, and the countless ways he had let me down. But now, sitting across from him, hearing the genuine gratitude in his voice, I was torn. I had done my job as a lawyer, but this wasn't just another case, it was my father. "You're welcome," I said, my voice steady but lacking warmth. "I did it because it was the right thing to do. But that doesn't change everything that's happened between us." He nodded, as if he expected that. "I know," he said softly. "I never expected it to change overnight. But I want you to know that I'm trying, Rachel. I'm trying to be better. Maybe it's too late, but I'm trying." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "You weren't there for us when we needed you. And I don't know if I can ever forget that. But I also know that I can't keep carrying this around anymore. I did what I had to do, and I did it for the right reasons." The silence that followed felt heavy, like we were both waiting for something that neither of us knew how to say. My mind raced back to all the years of resentment, the nights I spent wondering why he left, and the years I'd spent building walls around my heart to protect myself from the pain he had caused. Finally, he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant to hurt you, Rachel. You were the one thing I never wanted to fail." I couldn't look at him anymore. The weight of his words, the remorse in his eyes, it was almost too much. I had fought for so long to make sure that I never needed him, and now, in this moment, I wasn't sure how to reconcile all the emotions swirling inside me. "I'm glad you understand," I said quietly. "But understanding isn't enough, Dad. Not after everything." His face fell, the hope I saw in him a moment ago dissipating. "I know, Rachel. I know. But I'll always be grateful for what you did. Even if you can't forgive me." I didn't respond. I didn't have the words. Instead, I nodded, signaling that the conversation was over. For now, anyway. He stood up slowly, as though hesitating to leave, but finally, he did. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me in the quiet of my office. I stared at the empty chair across from me, my thoughts a jumble of emotions, anger, relief, exhaustion. In the days that followed, the weight of everything began to settle. I had done my job, and I had helped clear his name. But the personal healing, the mending of our broken relationship, it was something neither of us was ready for. Not yet. But for the first time in years, I felt like we were standing on the same ground. And that, in itself, was a start. I leaned back, arms crossed, my gaze steady. "No need to thank me. I was doing my job, as your attorney." He winced, the weight of my tone settling in. Still, he nodded. "But it was more than that. You saved me, Rachel. After everything I put you through. I didn't deserve your help." I let the silence hang between us, then answered, "It wasn't about you. It was about me. About doing what was right, even when it hurt. This wasn't some act of loyalty, it was a choice. A choice to be better than the example I was given." His face fell, shame and sorrow clouding his expression. "If I could take it all back, the way I left, the way I failed you and your mom, I would. I can't change the past, but I want you to know how proud I am of the woman you've become. Even if I didn't get to help you become her." Something tugged at me, maybe pity, maybe the faint echo of what could have been. But it didn't erase anything. "I didn't need your pride," I said quietly. "I needed a father. And when I needed you most, you weren't there." He didn't argue. He simply lowered his head. "I understand. I just hope, maybe one day, you'll forgive me." I didn't respond. Maybe there wasn't an answer. Maybe silence said everything that needed to be said. I wasn't ready to forgive, not yet, maybe not ever. Some absences dig too deep, and no apology can fill the space they leave behind. But as I watched him walk out of my office, shoulders heavy with regret, I felt something shift inside me. I didn't need his validation. I didn't need closure. I had already become everything I ever needed to be. Strong. Capable. Whole. I stayed seated, letting the silence wrap around me like a cloak of calm. He had left long ago, but I had found myself in the wreckage. I was no longer the girl he walked away from. I was Rachel Monroe, daughter, survivor, attorney, and fighter. And I was proud. If this story moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support helps us keep sharing powerful stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next episode.